What's going on, everyone? This is Ace, and welcome back to The Reckoning. And today, we are talking about Lady Death in the story Death Becomes Her, otherwise known as Lady Death Issue 0. Now, Issue 0s were a big deal back in the 90s, and so I think this was done to kind of follow along with that trend, but also, Brian was using this as a sort of kickoff to Lady Death's new story, as he had plans for moving the character to monthly outgoings rather than the miniseries format which Chaos Comics had been known for in the past. In this Issue 0, we see Lady Death moving forward on her journey to return to Hell, and along the way, we get a glimpse of an alternate timeline. Essentially, we get to see if her life had been different, primarily due to her mother staying alive. We are also introduced for the first time to the ancient character known as Death, and the connection he has to Lady Death. But before I get too carried away, if you enjoy Lady Death, Chaos Comics, or dark fantasy as a whole, then feel free to give this video a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, click the bell as well, as it helps out the channel tremendously and allows all of you to stay up to date with all Lady Death content we have in store for you. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's begin. So let me catch you all up to date in where we are within Lady Death's story at the time of this Issue 0. As despite the numbering, this is actually not the very first Lady Death title, and by this time, she had already gone through several memorable battles and story arcs. But to begin, Asgard, yes, Asgard from Norse mythology, has been saved from absolute destruction, which was attempted by the ancient Chaos Lord known as Genocide and his monstrous armies of Wraithworld. Lady Death, equipped with the new powerful and mysterious blade named Nightmare, along with the help from a timeless warrior named Bedlam and her newly discovered family, that being her step/half-sisters Vandala and Volnavia, who are also powerful Valkyries in their own right, defeated the powerful Chaos Lord. So much has transpired, and it almost feels like a lifetime since Lady Death was kicked out of Hell and began her odyssey, guided through the universe fighting deities and fallen angels, while at the same time trying to figure out her purpose and sense of belonging. She ultimately landed in Asgard and found family and a notion that she no longer has to be alone. Battle after painstaking battle, she realizes more and more about herself and her character, who she is and who she wishes to become. But her infamous sword, created by her most loyal friend Cremator, known as Darkness, was destroyed and then utilized alongside many other elements to form another weapon, the previously mentioned Nightmare, a cursed blade that has a tendency to demand blood and have the side effect of bringing out the darker and more primal tendencies of its wielder, and in this case, our Lady Death. Her crucible has ended, at least this time around, and she has a purpose and perhaps a responsibility to return to Hell and her endless graveyard. With the absence of Lucifer, she will have to return Hell to order, as since she has been gone, it has been utter chaos, fueled with battles and bloodshed on who would rule over the Inferno. She also must wonder what of her love Evil Ernie, as she has not been able to communicate with him for such a long period of time. And what of his mission of Megadeth back on Earth? Has it been accomplished at this point? And is it even what she wants anymore? All these questions and possibilities face her, and she plans to step forward and meet them, just as she has with any adversary she's fought before. So as mentioned earlier, Asgard is celebrating and reconstructing itself from the damage and loss of almost complete annihilation. Vandala, Lady Death's sister, asks Volnavia where Hope, aka Lady Death, is. Volnavia simply replies, "Gone." And Brock, one of Asgard's blacksmiths, also chimes in. Gone where? Gone to Hell. We then go to our main character as she is traveling amongst the cosmos and ends up in the remains of some planet or star that has been reduced to rubble. She stops to enjoy the stillness and how silent the void can be. The entire universe seems to be dead, and it's so peaceful. She wonders if that is the answer to peace, her final crossing over, or as she states, peace through annihilation. However, she is not alone. She can sense an ancient and overwhelming power from behind her. The air becomes noticeably colder, even for space. The shadowy figure speaks.
You are making your presence known in the cosmos.
Who are you?
I simply wanted to meet you.
Nightmare, Lady Death's cursed blade, turns to Lady Death and states, "It is death, milady." The shadowy figure confirms.
Yes, The final embrace. Death.
Lady Death is unfazed, however, and she immediately charges and uppercuts the figure. To hell with you! But as she prepares for battle, the figure vanishes and she is taken aback, only to have it reappear and state that it is not here for confrontation. Still a little uneasy, she asks, "What have I done to deserve your attention?" The figure responds,
You vanquished the father of lies. Is that not enough?
So, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Lady Death was kicked out of Hell by the plots and schemes of Pagan, Hell's Jester. And since then, she has been on a cosmic and multi-world spanning odyssey that led her to Asgard and to her remaining family, is where she learned of a prophecy that she was the chosen one, the one that would decide the outcome of the judgment war between heaven and hell. She has just recently come to maybe believe the idea, but resentfully. Still, she believes that death is here to put a stop to her, or maybe fears what she may do to determine the future outcome.
Fear you? Ridiculous.
Death explains that he has come to her because of her feelings toward death. Everything about her is done in death's name, her drive, her ambition, even her name.
Admittedly, you are powerful, but you think narrowly.
He says that her thoughts about death being final and the end of everything, and that it is evil or acts with intent is simply not true.
Notions of good and bad, right and wrong, don't apply to death. Death simply is.
Once again, Lady Death strikes with her blade at Death, and it goes right through them, with seemingly no effect. Liar! You claimed my mother's death before her time. You claimed my friends, my loved ones. You stole my life. Death asks Lady Death if she truly believes, had her mother lived, would her life really be any different? Would she be exactly where she is currently? Now, I have to say that I am surprised by her answer, as I assumed that maybe Lady Death believed that if things were different, then she would not have to endure everything up to this point, the suffering, the loss, and just everything. But she yells back at Death, "Of course! Everything would have been the same, but I would have had my mother." She falls to her knees. Don't you see? People are vile. They steal your joy away and leave you with nothing. You know, this sentiment and reaction that Lady Death gives off here really showcases to me that despite everything, the show of strength, the vengeful attitude, the pride, and her stubbornness, really, aside from all of these things, she's just hurting and very much alone still. I mean, sure, she has made friends like Cremator back in Hell, and it's wonderful for her to be reunited with her sisters that she is just finding out about. But overall, she misses her mom, and that kind of love can be irreplaceable. And she is literally looking death in the face and yelling, "Why? Why did it have to be this way?" And it kind of cuts a bit deeper if you explore this more, as how many of us at one point or another have done this very same thing. Sure, maybe it wasn't as dramatic, or maybe not exactly like this, but we all deal with loss differently, and I know for sure the pain was definitely still there. So I empathize with Lady Death and feel for the character. Now, what happens next is kind of like a It's a Wonderful Life scenario, and if some of you are unfamiliar with that film, well, first off, go and watch it, and secondly, it's an absolutely excellent movie and one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies to watch when the season comes around. But just in case, and I know, in case anyone hasn't seen it yet, to kind of give you the rundown, is within this movie, the main character, George Bailey, he is granted the ability to see what his life would be like if he was never born. And very much like that, here, we get to see what life would have possibly been for Lady Death, or in this instance, Hope, if her mother remained alive. Now, what I find significant about this flashback / what if scenario that is shown to Lady Death, but also to us the audience, is that if we were newcomers to Lady Death's story when this was released, or if this was our first issue of Lady Death that we had picked up, well, we would get to see a version of the world in which Lady Death came from. Sure, it is not the true origin, and the story makes that perfectly clear that this is definitely an alternative take, but the important characters are all present when it comes to Lady Death and her previous life when she was the girl named Hope. These would be characters such as her mother Marion, her evil and twisted father Matthias. They are all still present, and on top of this, a lot of the appropriate changes that were done to their characters are shown off here, which we had not seen before. For example, in the original story, Marion, Lady Death's mother, has already passed away, and we just know that she died when Lady Death was a young girl. But that is it, as we are introduced to Lady Death as a young woman / older girl who has had to live with Matthias, and very much so in fear of him. But within the most recent Lady Death story arc that would have just occurred at this point in time, we find out that Lady Death's mother, Marion, would have been an ex-Viking and had combat training and very formidable skills. We learn about Lady Death's sisters, Vandala and Volnavia, and how Odin had taken and raised them to become Valkyries at the request of Marion, as to protect them from freezing to death or being slaughtered at the hands of the Christian Crusaders. So some standouts in this alternate past is that Marion herself happens to overhear Matthias and his conversations with the Archdukes of Hell, and one of the matters that gets brought up is that he intends to discard of Marion and laughs as he tells the demons that he was actually a part of the Crusaders who attacked the Viking people Marion was a part of and had even killed her previous husband. After hearing this, we get to see Marion plan to kill her vile husband and take out her old weaponry. After the evil sorcerer's demise, Hope and her mother would rule the village together, and they would prosper. Both women would be recognized as trustworthy leaders and even fierce warriors, as they also took their place, leading the battlefields whenever necessary. Now, time would pass, and just like what happened in Lady Death's original timeline, the plague arrived at the doorsteps of the village. And it's here where we see another familiar face, Niccolo, who still studied medicine and was able to find a cure. However, instead of feeling defeated by the ignorance of the villagers and giving up on his studies, he would ask Marion if she would help promote his cure that he learned from the Middle East. She knew there would be resentment, but agreed to help. The cure would eventually work, but because the results were not immediate, the villagers grew enraged as deaths continued and even blamed Marion for agreeing to do what they called non-Christian methods of treatment. Now, in normal Lady Death fashion, her temper is short and she becomes resentful to the people for hating on her mother. But Marion, who really does seem like a good leader, explains that they are simply afraid, and it is these times that they must stand tall for their people and regardless still care for them. But before tensions can increase, a sudden invasion is happening by a group calling themselves the Knight Templars. They bear crosses, and apparently word must have gotten out that Marion's village was using non-Christian methods to cure the sickness. Now, with so many of the villagers sick, it does not look good for our girls and their warriors, but still, they go to meet the invaders head on and protect the people. And I have to say, these battle scenes are just amazing. It's the first time I think we've seen Hope in full-on combat mode, really out there getting her hands dirty, and it's pretty badass, if I say so myself. And same thing with her mom Marion, she is just a fierce warrior. Now, I don't think it was done intentionally, but Niccolo is also helping them fight and is struck down. So, just like in Lady Death's actual timeline, so this poor man can never catch a break, it seems like. Brother needs to stick to them books, cause Way of the Warrior, more like Way of the Ground, but anyways, luckily in this version he does pull through and not actually die, so there is that at least. Now, the battle raged on, and just by chance a band of remaining Vikings would come to avenge the slaughter of their people and join the forces with Marion and her warriors to defeat the Knights Templar. As you can probably guess, amongst these Viking warriors of course are Vandala and Volnavia, who are reunited with their mother and introduced to Hope. The villagers, seeing the woman fight so rigorously to save them, wipes away any ill notions they had against them before. Niccolo's cures would eventually rid the plague from the village, and he and Hope would marry and have children. Marion and her 3 daughters would go down in history as beloved warrior maidens. Enough! Lady Death storms away from the Reaper, interrupting the vision. Why do you torment me with this story? Now, it is at this point where we get one more interesting piece of information about Lady Death that we had not known before this point. For you see, she goes on to say that she didn't have a choice in becoming Lady Death. She had to renounce her humanity and had to die, but she is then interrupted by the Reaper.
Die? Who says you are dead? You renounced your humanity, but you never died. Your existence has simply been extended due to forces beyond my control, but you are not immortal. You are mine whenever I choose.
And as these words sank in deep for Lady Death, she had a moment perhaps where she felt a cold shiver of uncertainty. But regardless, the moment didn't last long as the uncertainty turned into rage and she yells, "Lies!" She uses her bladeness and sends a power blast straight for Death, but it does absolutely nothing. The being simply states,
Have you learned nothing?
"How do I defeat you?"
You can't. I simply am.
And as the shadowy figure vanishes, he leaves Lady Death with his last words.
Be seeing you, Hope. Be seeing you.
So this was an interesting fact, as up to this point it was kind of believed that Lady Death was exactly that, the representation of death, cause of death, embodiment of death, but now we kind of realize that she is in fact something different. The Reaper is very real and seems to be taking an interest in her path. I can tell all of you that this won't be the last time we see the Reaper within the pages of Lady Death, and I'm very curious about all of your thoughts on the character and overall on this tale of Lady Death. She still has to travel the cosmos to return to hell, and we will have to see what happens upon her arrival and what obstacles and challenges will await her. But again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the tale, Death Becomes Her. Don't forget to give this video a like, and please leave your comments down below. As always, I will see you in the next one, and so until then, take care.